It started with a leak. A thin man in a gray hoodie, face obscured by a medical mask, slid a manila folder across the cold marble steps outside the J. Edgar Hoover building in D.C. The folder was marked with only 2 letters. I inside. Emails, financial transfers, intercepted phone call transcripts, damning material tied to none other than Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota's 5th District. Director Kash Patel had only been in the job for 6 months. Appointed after a stunning reshuffle in Washington, many critics called his ascension reckless. But Patel, a former national security prosecutor, chief of staff at the Department of Defense, and MAGA loyalist, wasn't interested in appeasing critics. He was focused on results. He wanted scalps. And this folder was the first real one anyone had dropped at his feet. Sitting behind his desk at FBI HQ, Patel flipped through the documents with calm intensity. There were names he recognized. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, transfers routed through Turkish banks, calls logged with suspicious individuals in Doha. The name Al-Muqaddam Foundation kept popping up, a foreign NGO already under light scrutiny by the Treasury Department for potentially financing extremist-linked activities in East Africa. But it wasn't just the paper trail. The folder included an encrypted USB. When decrypted by FBI analysts, it contained audio files, one featuring what sounded like Omar in a hushed conversation about neutralizing bad press and managing leverage with state and treasury. For the first time in years, Patel leaned back and smiled. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't internet conspiracy. This was evidence or something close enough that could open a full-scale investigation. By the end of the week, Patel had greenlit a Tier 1 operation on Omar, surveillance, financial audits, and covert taps, all under a sealed order. Only a handful of high-level DOJ officials were in the loop. Even the White House, deep in a re-election scramble, had not been notified. Not yet. Meanwhile, Omar's team in Minnesota was celebrating a small victory. Her district office had just secured federal grants for refugee housing, and local media painted her as the people's champion, a rising progressive star in an increasingly fractured Democratic Party. But inside her inner circle, tensions were rising. 2 aides had quietly quit in the past month, citing hostile working conditions. Her longtime fixer, Malik Farhan, had suddenly gone dark, no returned calls, no emails. Omar was rattled. She suspected leaks, though she didn't know to whom or from where. Her instincts told her something was coming. And when her top legislative aide brought her a request for a subpoena appearance marked DOJ/FBI Joint Task Force, her fears were confirmed. "What the hell is this?" she whispered, the blood draining from her face. "It's real," her aide replied. "They're looking into foreign influence operations. Your name came up multiple times." Across town, Patel sat in a dimly lit secure meeting room. His team had just finalized the blueprint for Operation Crossfire Redux, the codename assigned to the investigation into Ilhan Omar. The name was a nod to the infamous Crossfire hurricane probe years earlier, a poetic twist Patel found satisfying. He briefed his task force. "This isn't political. This is criminal. Our job is to follow the facts, wherever they lead." But everyone in the room knew, if the facts were true, this could end a congressional career. Possibly more. As the sun set over Capitol Hill, with whispers swirling and pressure mounting, 2 powerful forces prepared for a clash. On one side, a rising political figure accused of betraying her country's trust. On the other, a man who had made it his mission to clean house, starting from the top. The battle lines were drawn. The Capitol buzzed with usual noise, but a certain tension floated through the air. Few knew what was happening behind the scenes. The FBI wasn't leaking, and Patel kept a tight circle. But power whispers through backchannels faster than the press can report it. At the center of the storm, Ilhan Omar tried to maintain a facade of control. Publicly, she dismissed the subpoena as yet another example of political harassment. On MSNBC, she delivered a firm rebuttal. These smear campaigns always seem to target women of color who challenge the system. I won't be intimidated. But off camera, in her private office, she was unraveling. Where did it come from? She asked her communications director, pacing the floor. Who's behind it? Her comms director hesitated. It's coming from the top, Ilhan. The FBI director himself. Kash Patel. Omar stopped in her tracks. Kash Patel? Are you serious? He was a name she knew, partisan, ambitious, dangerous. He had built his career off controversial intel ops and loyalty to Trump-era ideology. If he was behind this, she wasn't just dealing with a standard federal inquiry. This was a war. Meanwhile, Patel's task force began the forensic sweep. FinCEN was now involved, issuing confidential requests to trace money trails linked to nonprofits associated with Omar's campaign. One particularly suspicious organization, the Humanity Alliance for Hope, showed multiple donations from overseas foundations flagged by NATO intelligence partners for potential radical links. It wasn't illegal, not yet, but it smelled wrong. "I want FARA violations," Patel said in the war room. "I want to know if she coordinated with foreign agents, even indirectly." His top investigator, Special Agent Laura Kensley, nodded. "We're already on it. There are back-channel communications between one of her aides and a Qatari intermediary. We're pulling phone records now." Patel's eyes narrowed. "Good. She wants to play the identity card in the media, let her. We'll play the truth card." Then came the first leak. A small conservative blog out of Virginia posted a grainy image of Omar leaving a black car outside a known private diplomatic club in D.C. The blog claimed she had met with foreign policy influencers with ties to anti-American interests. The post went viral in minutes, boosted by right-wing influencers. Suddenly, the buzz was no longer confined to D.C., it was in the national bloodstream. Omar's team issued denials, claiming the meeting was with a women's rights delegation from Jordan. But the damage was done. Her opponents on the Hill seized the moment. Congressman Mark Redfield, Republican Texas, called for her immediate suspension from the Foreign Affairs Committee. "This is not about race or gender," he shouted on the House floor. "This is about a sitting member of Congress potentially being influenced, compromised, by foreign interests. We cannot allow that." The comment drew thunderous applause from one side, icy glares from the other. At FBI headquarters, Patel watched the hearing live, arms crossed. He turned to Agent Kensley. "Get ready. When we move hard. I want her on the record under oath." Kensley nodded. "You want to subpoena her for a grand jury?" "Not yet," Patel replied. "First, we let her sweat. Then we go public." Omar's legal team scrambled to form a firewall. She retained 2 former DOJ prosecutors and hired a crisis management firm known for navigating political scandals. But even they were shocked by the volume of material they were now up against. "There's no question they're building a narrative," her lawyer, Danica Ellis, told her. "Whether or not it sticks depends on what else they've got. Is there anything else we don't know?" Omar was silent. "Ilhan, I need to know now. Anything that could be twisted, taken out of context." "I told you everything," she said coldly. But her mind drifted to an encrypted phone she hadn't used in months and a message she once received from an old contact in Istanbul. As the days turned into weeks, more documents began surfacing in the media. Leaked texts. Flight logs. One showed Omar's brother, long a target of online conspiracy theories, listed as a consultant for a Somali-based NGO that received U.S. aid. The headlines exploded. FBI zeroes in on Omar-linked groups overseas. Kash Patel circles in, is this the beginning of the end for Ilhan Omar? Public opinion was beginning to shift. Even some progressives were calling for transparency. And in a shocking twist, a freshman Democrat from Oregon broke ranks and called for a bipartisan inquiry. Patel knew it was time. He picked up the phone and called his liaison at the DOJ. "I want to open formal charges for review. FARA violations, campaign finance fraud, and potential material support clauses. Let's see what the U.S. attorney thinks." "Understood. Make sure she knows we're not playing politics. We're playing chess." In a quiet corner of Minneapolis, a journalist named Eva Raines was combing through old court transcripts. She wasn't part of the mainstream press. She ran a small, independent Substack, but her work had gone viral before. And now she had a lead. "I think we've been looking at this the wrong way," Eva told her colleague over coffee. "Everyone's chasing these recent donations and shell organizations, but I found something that traces back to 2010, well before she was even elected." Eva had discovered immigration paperwork, a sworn affidavit tied to an asylum application filed by Omar's family. On its face, it was routine, but buried deep in the documents was a discrepancy. A birth certificate mismatch. A sponsorship listing a relative that, years later, was denied as being part of her immediate family. Eva cross-referenced that name, Abd Hakim Nur, with Patel's leaked documents. Her eyes widened. Nur was a known associate of the Al-Muqaddam Foundation, the same group the FBI was tracking. She grabbed her phone and began typing. The headline came to her like lightning. Ilhan Omar's immigration trail, ties to shadowy foreign network begin long before Congress. Patel saw the story before it reached the public. His media monitoring team flagged it within 90 seconds. "She's cooked," he muttered, barely hiding a grin. His team had spent the last few weeks cross-referencing all the NGO names with State Department watch lists. They weren't just chasing financial crimes anymore, they were dancing on the edge of national security violations. The evidence now pointed to 3 key accusations. Undisclosed financial ties to foreign NGOs with known links to extremist movements. Use of campaign funds to facilitate travel and transactions unrelated to official business. Failure to register contacts under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. But the kicker was the immigration thread. If they could prove Omar lied on federal forms about her family structure or affiliations, that could constitute immigration fraud. And that wasn't just disqualifying. It was deportable. "We leaked the basics," Patel instructed. "Not the classified details, just enough to let the press run with it. The DOJ will follow. She'll crack." Meanwhile, Omar was on the defensive. The House Ethics Committee, under pressure, launched a preliminary review. Her legal team scrambled to answer subpoenas while privately negotiating with the DOJ for limited immunity on certain disclosures. Still, she denied everything publicly. "I have nothing to hide," she said during a fiery press conference outside her district office. These attacks are part of a right-wing smear machine determined to silence immigrant voices, Muslim voices, black voices. The crowd of supporters roared in approval. But the press wasn't buying it anymore. Even the Washington Post ran a cautious headline. Questions mount over Representative Omar's foreign ties as FBI escalates investigation. Behind the scenes, Omar's husband urged her to step back. "Maybe let someone else lead on foreign policy for now," he said gently. "Lay low." "I can't," she replied. "If I back down, I lose. And they'll come for the next woman who looks like me." Then came the subpoena from the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was official. Ilhan Omar was the subject of a criminal investigation. In the secure FBI briefing room, Agent Kensley turned to Patel. "We got access to her private email backups through Microsoft's warrant response team. You're gonna want to see this." She dropped a thick binder onto the table. One email stood out. Subject line, regarding leverage. It was a conversation with an overseas donor and a reference to ensuring favorable votes in the House Appropriations Subcommittee. The donor had donated $40,000 to Omar's PAC weeks later. It wasn't a smoking gun yet, but it was the closest thing they'd found to a quid pro quo. Patel leaned forward, scanning the document. "She's done," he whispered. "She just doesn't know it yet." Omar did know. Deep down, she felt the walls closing in. Her attorneys urged her to get ahead of the narrative, to strike a plea or go public with a full disclosure, something to show transparency. But she refused. "I built my name on strength," she said. "I won't end it with surrender." What she didn't realize was that someone in her own inner circle had already flipped. FBI agents had quietly secured cooperation from Malik Farhan, her elusive fixer. He had disappeared not out of fear, but because he had been negotiating a deal. Patel had promised him immunity in exchange for testimony. And Malik had receipts, audio recordings, emails, personal notes. He had everything. As Washington held its breath and the press circled like vultures, Patel prepared for the final move. "This will be the biggest congressional scandal in decades," he said, stepping into a closed-door briefing with the DOJ. And for the first time since taking office, he had bipartisan support behind him. The hearing room was standing room only. Cameras lined the perimeter, each one trained on the witness chair where Representative Ilhan Omar was about to testify, not as a questioner but as the questioned. Subpoenaed under oath by the House Oversight Committee, she had no choice but to appear. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with anticipation. Cable news anchors were already calling it the political trial of the century, even though no charges had been formally filed. But it wasn't about charges anymore. It was about optics, power, narrative. Kash Patel wasn't present in the room. That would have looked too aggressive, but he watched from a secured FBI field operations center nearby, arms folded, expression unreadable. "I want full transcription," he said to Agent Kensley beside him. "Facial recognition, too. Watch who she looks at when she dodges." In the chamber, Omar took her oath. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," she said, her voice unwavering. The chairman began calmly. "Congresswoman Omar, are you aware of any current or past associations between your campaign or affiliated organizations And any foreign entity flagged by U.S. National Security Services? No, she said flatly. Are you denying any financial transfers to or from NGOs operating in territories identified by U.S. intelligence as hostile or unstable? I'm denying that I ever authorized such transfers. If others acted independently, I cannot speak for that. It was a clever answer. Legal. Non-committal. But the next part hit harder. We have sworn testimony from your former aide, Malik Farhan, who claims that you personally instructed him to reroute donations through a soft charity based in Doha, funds which were later traced to lobbying efforts aimed at influencing U.S. policy. Do you deny this? Omar's eyes flickered, just for a second. I deny ever using my position for personal or political gain through foreign funding. Not a denial of the act, just of the intent. It was all threading the needle. Then they played the clip. A leaked recording, voice identified by FBI audio forensics, played in the room. Omar's voice. We need to keep the press soft and the money flowing. I don't care how Malik moves it so long as it's clean by the time it gets here. Treasury isn't looking that closely anymore. Gasped. Reporters scribbled frantically. Omar froze. Her lawyers leaned forward, whispering furiously. The chairman let the silence stretch like piano wire. Would you like to revise your statement, Congresswoman? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I'd like to consult my counsel. The session was immediately recessed. But the headlines wrote themselves within seconds. Across town, Patel stood and straightened his tie. That's it, he said. We've cracked the shell. She won't survive this. Agent Kensley looked at her tablet. DOJ is drafting the first wave of charges. Wire fraud, FARA violations, conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government. Patel didn't smile. She still has political capital. She'll use every ounce of it. But this isn't about her anymore. Kensley raised an eyebrow. Then who's it about? He looked past her, eyes cold and focused. It's about every single one of them who thinks they're above the law. Meanwhile, back in Minnesota, Omar's district office was overwhelmed. Angry calls, supportive emails. Protesters, both in favor and against, camped outside. Her political base was splintering. Progressive allies were caught between defending her and saving themselves. In a leaked private meeting, a senior Democrat from California said, "If she doesn't resign, we may have to call for expulsion. This isn't about her identity. It's about survival." Even members of the squad were backing away quietly, their social media eerily silent. One lone voice remained fiercely supportive. Representative Rashida Tlaib, who tweeted, "I stand with my sister Ilhan. We've always known the system would come for us when we spoke too loudly. Don't be fooled." But even that didn't slow the momentum. Then one more twist hit the wire. Eva Raines, the journalist, released a classified memo she claimed was leaked from a DHS source. It detailed a 2014 surveillance operation that had flagged Omar's communications with a foreign journalist suspected of acting as an intermediary for Turkish intelligence. No charges were ever filed. But the implication was nuclear. The title of the memo, Operation Crescent Whisper, Domestic Contact of Interest. Omar. That night, every major network carried the story. Patel's face appeared on Fox, CBS, and even CNN. In a rare public comment, he said, "We follow facts, not feelings. No one is above scrutiny. Not a janitor, not a general, and certainly not a member of Congress." Asked if he believed Omar had betrayed the country, Patel didn't hesitate. "I believe we're just scratching the surface of something bigger." The air was heavy in Washington. Rumors were flying. A resignation letter was being drafted. The DOJ was ready to file an indictment. Omar's lawyers were seeking a plea. In a single month, a political powerhouse had gone from untouchable to teetering on the edge of ruin. Inside her private Georgetown residence, Ilhan Omar stared at a muted TV screen flashing coverage of her own unraveling. She hadn't slept. Her once loyal inner circle had shrunk to a shadow, most too afraid to be seen with her, lest they burn too. But one thing still burned hot in her: defiance. "Let them come," she muttered. flipping through the DOJ letter her attorney had just delivered. Let them bring their charges. They can't erase what I built. Her husband, stoic in the corner, broke the silence. You need to decide now. You resign or you go nuclear. She didn't flinch. We go nuclear. Across town, Kash Patel stood before a packed DOJ press room. Flanked by Deputy Attorney General Carl Stone and U.S. Attorney Jane Kim, he read the charges with deliberate precision. Ilhan Omar, member of the U.S. House of Representatives, is now the subject of an official indictment recommendation for knowingly receiving and concealing campaign donations from foreign agents, failing to register under FARA for coordinated activities abroad, attempting to influence U.S. foreign aid legislation in coordination with entities tied to foreign governments, lying under oath to federal authorities and during congressional hearings, immigration fraud during naturalization proceedings. The press exploded into a frenzy. Even hardened reporters looked stunned. This wasn't just political scandal, it bordered on treasonous intent. But Omar wasn't out of moves. That evening, she scheduled an emergency broadcast. Not through any network, but a YouTube livestream, drawing over 4 million live viewers. Dressed in black, standing before a Somali tapestry, she stared directly into the camera. They want to end my career. They want to rewrite my story. But I will not let them. I have been a voice for justice, peace, and dignity. And now they accuse me of being a traitor? No, I will expose them. She reached into a folder. Let me ask the American people. Why was my office being surveilled by Kash Patel's FBI 2 years before this investigation began? Why are whistleblowers telling me about black bag surveillance programs run without judicial oversight? Why are certain PACs who funded Patel's allies now bidding for defense contracts overseas? She held up a document. You want to investigate? Let's investigate everyone. Twitter ignited. YouTube's live chat flew so fast it was unreadable. The political machine seized up. In the House, Democrats split in two. The moderates begging Omar to resign quietly, and the progressives suddenly re-energized, accusing Patel of running a political witch hunt. Patel didn't care. He knew what was coming. We have enough to push a conviction, he told Agent Kensley. If this goes to trial, it'll tear open every part of the political system. But if we blink, we lose everything. Kensley leaned in. Are we sure about going public with the surveillance programs? If she's bluffing. She's not bluffing, Patel replied. But it doesn't matter. If we don't act now, this becomes a war of narratives. And we already won on the facts. In one final shockwave, the New York Times published a leak from inside the FBI's own oversight board. The article accused Patel of aggressive overreach, citing internal memos warning that his investigation was politically charged and potentially unethical. The DOJ was suddenly caught between two flames, a credible indictment and a threat to the Bureau's credibility itself. Within 72 hours, calls for a special independent counsel rang out from both sides of the aisle. Congress opened an inquiry, not into Omar this time, but into Patel's conduct. The story that began as an exposure had become a full-blown constitutional crisis. In the final scene, Patel was seen walking out of the J. Edgar Hoover building, head held high, reporters chasing him down the marble steps. One shouted, "Are you going to resign, Director Patel?" He paused. I didn't take this job to win friends. I took it to protect the Constitution. If that's not popular anymore, then maybe the whole system needs an investigation. He walked into a black SUV and disappeared. Across town, Ilhan Omar sat quietly at her kitchen table, phone buzzing nonstop. Her attorney laid 2 papers before her. One, a formal resignation letter. The other, a plea deal that would avoid jail time but permanently end her political career. She didn't touch either. She stared at the screen. A new video was trending, hers now titled, Ilhan Omar versus the Deep State, the fight isn't over. And maybe it wasn't.